Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street.
Welcome to another edition of the Good and Plenty podcast. I am your host, Jeff Goodman, and today is Tuesday. Remember, Good and Plenty coming to you every Tuesday and Thursday. And remember, today's show brought to you by The Athletic. Save 40% off your monthly subscription today by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. And with that, our guest today is a member of The Athletic. He writes for him, and he covers the Boston Celtics, and that is none other than Jay King. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, iTunes, Stitcher. You can find me, CLNS Media. You can also find me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter, watchstadium.com. Now pleased to welcome in a fellow Bostonian, a Celtics expert. So this, if you're not into the Celtics and what's wrong with the Boston Celtics right now, you should not listen to this podcast. We're bringing in Jay King of The Athletic, formerly of Mass Live, formerly of, is this right, Jay, the Celtics Town blog? Is this true?
That's a blast from the past, man. Yes, that is where I got my start writing. I
What
had
the
to start
hell?
a blog when I was in.
What is that?
I had to start a blog when I was in college.
Wow. How many people? Like 10 people read it? How many people?
Probably not even that. I used to. This is funny. The origins of the Jay King story. I used to spam Celtics blog's comment section with my articles to the point where Jeff Clark, the editor of Celtics blog, had to email me and tell me, just calm down, Jay. You can't be doing this on all our articles. So Celtics Town was my first, I don't want to call it a job because I didn't get paid, but it was my first writing stop, I guess.
Did you give the Celtics Town blog to anybody? Has anybody still got that thing rolling?
No, so I tried to keep it just to have it, but then it kind of disappeared. I think I had it through one of those hosting sites, and it expired, and someone else ended up buying it. So
big money.
Every story I wrote for them has disappeared, which is probably a good thing.
Well, listen, I love reading your stuff. I mean that back from Mass Live. I did not read Celtics Town blog. All right, I will admit.
That's a shame.
I did. I missed it. But love your stuff at The Athletic.
Thank you.
Let's start. I mean, I got a myriad of things that I want to hit you on with the Celtics, to be honest. And I've been there, but I'm not there consistently this year. Obviously, I do more college than NBA, but I try to watch as much as I can, kind of. But you're in the trenches there. You're in Philly right now. They play the Sixers on Tuesday night in a game that Kyrie will not play again. We could talk a half an hour on Kyrie. Let's start.
They've been an interesting team.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's so many ways you can go. Let's start with Kyrie because I got a few different things I want to hit you with Kyrie. Number one, are you at all concerned with his consistent knee issues? He's had plenty dating back to 2015, missing the playoffs, had 2 knee surgeries this past year, now is sitting out, which with something that doesn't look to be serious at all. And I would sit him out, obviously, through the All-Star break because there's no reason to play him right now before the All-Star break. You might as well give him, this time off. But are you concerned with him? And I don't even mean today, but I mean if you need to lock him up for big money, which is what they're looking to do right now. Are you at all nervous of paying him max money for the next however many years worrying about the fact if his knees are going to be able to handle it?
I wouldn't be too concerned if I were them, and I say that because the two surgeries last year both stemmed back to the initial issue from 2015. That was the hardware causing him irritation and then causing an infection, and he needed two surgeries to take care of that. This year, other players on the team, including Al Horford, have noted Kyrie's healthy again, and they think that's a big reason why his defensive effort has been up, why he's been more effective as an all-around player. This new knee issue is totally unrelated to the other. It's the other knee. I wouldn't be too concerned, but I also do know that the Celtics, I think Danny Ainge has said this, and Brad Stevens either implied it or said it directly this year, they don't consider him an 82-game-a-year type player.
Yeah.
They know that they're going to have to sit him some games and rest him and keep his body fresh.
Yeah, he's a
for the playoffs.
Game guy.
And that's fine. Like, if you sign him to a 5-year extension or another 5-year contract, another 4-year contract, he's going to be 30, 31 by the end of it, then, he still should be in his prime. That's not an age when guys typically go downhill. I don't see it as a major concern, but obviously the injuries have been there, and it's something that you'd have to at least look at from a Celtics perspective before committing to him. And I do think they're fully intending to commit to him as long as he wants to re-sign.
Yeah, I do too. I just think, the smartest move is obviously let this thing go as long as you can because, again, he gets hurt again here. Then obviously it's a different situation with Terry Rozier. Then you got to pay up. You got to keep Terry. And I think Danny actually has a lot of confidence, judging by what Terry did in the playoffs last year, that he feels like Terry could be a starting. Now, is he Kyrie? No, and obviously not in the offensive end. Very few are, but he's better defensively. But again, and it would cost a lot less money. Kyrie's leadership. Where do you stand with that? That's been a big one for me from the get-go because I had heard it over and over from his Cleveland days of many people in that organization saying, listen, not a huge fan of kind of Kyrie, moody, not a great leader. And then, he comes here and you know how it goes. Like every place, people say the right things for the most part. Oh, he's been a great leader. He's been a great this and that. I've always felt like I just don't know if Kyrie's like leadership material. I felt like Al Horford's got to be the leader in this team, but he's so damn quiet. So I don't know who is the leader of this team. Brad Stevens is quiet too. I mean, he's not going to get up and MF anybody. So who's the leader of this team, and is that part of the problem right now?
I think to an extent it's probably part of the problem. I think Kyrie has obviously wanted to lead. That is something he wanted for himself. That's part of the reason he got out of Cleveland. Yeah. He wants to be the centerpiece. He wants to be the voice of a team. He wants to coax young guys, which he has a lot this season, probably to the detriment of the team. But he wants that. And I do think this has been a learning process for him. I think he'll be the first one to tell you he hasn't always gone about things the right way. I think his voice obviously carries the most weight in that locker room, at least with the media. And, Al Horford's soft-spoken. Brad is soft-spoken. Those guys aren't like confrontational guys. I think the two confrontational guys on the Celtics are probably Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris. And they don't have the same clout from a player standpoint that Kyrie does. So the exploration is the word I would say of Kyrie and his leadership it's been up and down. And I think he needlessly called out the young guys too much. And I think that caused some friction in the locker room. Obviously, Jaylen Brown came out and sort of called out Kyrie, forcing Kyrie to apologize in a statement that even in and of itself was like, is he taking another shot at the young guys?
Right.
Taking a shot at LeBron?
Kind of was. Yeah.
That whole statement was like, it had everything. But I also think leadership may be overrated. It may not. I do feel that this Celtics team has caused itself unnecessary headaches by overreacting to minor things. It's like every patch of losing that they hit, there's another thing, whether it's Kyrie snapping on the court against Gordon Hayward or Kyrie berating the young guys, or Marcus Morris shoving Jaylen Brown, or Marcus Morris a couple nights ago saying we don't have any fun. It's like they've played really well through some stretches, but every time they haven't, it's just kind of been chaotic.
I feel like that's the pressure, though, Jay. I feel like that's kind of the pressure that they've faced being, the team with the bullseye on their back in the East. And it's like every loss or every losing streak where, like, obviously it's a different situation. Golden State's, won multiple championships here. So when they go through a losing streak, it's no big deal. The Celtics, like you said, I think they just kind of overdo it. And maybe it's Boston too, right? And everybody gets, crazy over every losing streak. But you wouldn't think that would necessarily be the case. Everybody was so into the Patriots and, Red Sox win, Patriots win. Kind of the Celtics have kind of, I don't want to say been in the shadows, but they kind of have until this point. And now everybody's focused on the Celtics here for the next few months. And the bottom line is if they figure it out now, Jay, nobody's going to care what happened over the first 50 games before the All-Star break. Nobody's going to care as long as they put it together. Now, again, what do they have to do? And I guess I would ask you that. Like, you're the coach of the Celtics, or you're Danny Ainge. What do the Celtics team have to do to kind of get it together to get on track right now?
So I think what's interesting is they've actually been playing really well for the most part. Until they blew the two 20-point leads back-to-back against the Lakers and the Clippers, they'd won 10 of their last 11 games.
Yeah.
Since Marcus Smart moved into the starting lineup on November 26th, they've had, I think, the second best net rating behind the Warriors in the entire league. Like, on the court, they're playing well. I think there are a number of dynamics in play that have convinced them to sort of overreact to every loss. I think one of those is a 10-10 start, and that has lingered. They're in fourth or fifth place in the standings, and they look at that and they think this has been a huge disappointment. This season has been a huge disappointment. We aren't where we're supposed to be. So every loss matters more to them than it probably should. I think the other dynamic of that is young guys in lesser roles have, especially earlier on in the season, they wanted more than they had. And Kyrie was obviously outspoken against that. But it's strange dynamics from everywhere. Like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Terry Rozier were 3 playoff stars. And 2 of those, Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier, have had to settle into backup roles. Jason Tatum has probably had fewer touches than he wanted and has probably tried to press it too often when he does get touches. And then you've got the other dynamic, which I think is a huge deal, is that Gordon Hayward hasn't been right from the start of the season.
Yeah.
And he was starting early on. That starting lineup was a disaster with him in it. He still isn't the same. The Celtics kind of hyped him up to be back to where he was during the preseason or during the offseason, and it was very evident early on that he wasn't. I do think that's one of the things that I would pin on Brad Stevens and the coaching staff is that they raised expectations way too high for Gordon Hayward. And they acted like he was going to come back and be the all-star type of player he was. And by doing that, when he wasn't like that, some people in the public were antsy, and the expectations around the team got probably too high considering he's not at that level. And so I think they did this team a disservice by pretending, for whatever reason, and it might have been just to try to convince Gordon to be more confident, they still went out of their way to act like he was going to come back 100% healthy, and he hasn't even been close.
No, listen,
that's
you're
another
right.
dynamic that it's been tough for everybody. And I think that's been tough for Kyrie, too. Kyrie came to Boston and thought, man, me and Gordon Hayward, this is going to be awesome. Me, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, all these young, talented guys, and Gordon just hasn't been Gordon.
But Tatum's kind of taken the place of Gordon in a sense, right? I mean, Tatum's much further along than anybody thought, including myself, and I love Tatum and always have, but I didn't think he'd do this in year 2 just because I didn't think the opportunity would have been there in year 1. I mean, let's think about it. A year ago, like today, Jason Tatum was still kind of standing in the corner. I mean, that was pretty much his role until Kyrie got hurt, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it came quick for him. So I think, yeah, I mean, Hayward isn't what we thought he'd be. And, I said it a couple weeks ago when Golden State came in. One of the players told me, and I felt bad saying it, but it's true and it's something we all see. It's almost like taboo to say it because Gordon's such a good guy and you feel bad for him. But, the player said to me, listen, he's a liability right now on the court on both ends of the court. And again, we can see it for the most part. There's times when he looks pretty good depending on who he's guarding, right? Who he's matched up against. Sometimes it's not quite as evident. But there's certain matchups he's not ready for right now. And he's probably not going to be ready for this year. But I think Brad is probably trying to see if maybe he can get him closer this year. And I've heard people say, well, maybe you just take away his minutes at this point. Take away his minutes and just kind of call it a day. I just don't think you can do that with Gordon. You'll kill his confidence. And I think, again, Brad wants to see, can he get, where he's probably 60% right now of what he was, can you get him closer to 80 or 90, and can he be a factor in the playoffs? Because you agree, you're not going anywhere without Gordon Hayward at the end of the day, without a real Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, they need Gordon Hayward to be Gordon Hayward, or at least they need him to be a helpful player come the playoffs. I do think they can win without him. Obviously, the East is loaded up.
Yeah.
Like, really loaded up. So they're going to need him to be better than he has been. And you look at some of their bigger games, Golden State game, he was bad. He had one really good game against Toronto, but a lot of the times in their biggest games, he hasn't really held up. And he's still been getting minutes. And if I were a younger guy, and none of the younger guys, I'm sure, would admit to this. If I were one of the younger guys, I'd be frustrated that he gets crunch time minutes a lot, that he still plays a lot. And Jaylen Brown, for example, who's played really well the last couple of months after a very bad start, he's got to look out there and think, like, why is Gordon getting crunch time minutes?
Yeah.
Why aren't I getting those minutes? I've been better than him this season. And so there's been basically every dynamic they could have this season they've had, and it's just kind of been like everything all at once. And a lot of these problems you could see coming miles away. And I don't know if I realized how tough it would be for the younger guys to slide into smaller roles. And look, all of this would be a lot easier if Gordon Hayward was Gordon Hayward. If he was playing at an all-star level, what the hell is Jaylen Brown going to say?
Nothing.
What is Terry Rozier going to say? Nothing, because if he's kicking ass,
right,
you can't say anything. But he's not kicking ass, and so that has compounded, I think, the complications that the Celtics have dealt with. And none of this is on Gordon. Gordon, like, he had a devastating injury. None of this is on him. He worked his ass off to try to get back. It's just
you feel for him.
Matter.
Right.
You absolutely.
Completely. I think everybody feels for him, but like you said, if you're Jaylen Brown or you're somebody else who's sitting there on the bench watching him in crunch time, you're saying to yourself, like, all right, how much longer is this going to happen? We need to win games. We need to get this team, I mean, they all look at it, every guy in the NBA, they think they should be playing. It's the same thing in college. Yeah, they all think they should be, playing the NBA one day. Every guy in the NBA thinks they should be playing more minutes, other than T.J. McConnell is like the only kid who ever told me, like, I'm a backup point guard. That's what I am, and I'm good with it. I understand my role. There are very few like that, right? Quick break to tell you today's show is brought to you by The Athletic. If you haven't heard about The Athletic by now, you must be living under a rock. These guys have been crushing every element of sports coverage imaginable. Whether you're looking for specific local coverage with beat guys, sports discussed under a national lens, or anything and everything in between, you got to make sure you take a look at The Athletic. No pop-ups, no ads, just high-quality content waiting behind every single click. Zach Harper, Frank Isola, Sam Amick, who was a guest on the show, Shams Charania, who was a guest on this show, Jay King, who's a guest today. They have you covered on everything NBA related. If college is more your style, then make sure you check out my guy Seth Davis, Dana O'Neill, Brian Hamilton. You can't get content like this anywhere else. 600 to 750 new articles every week. Who else is pushing out quality content like this? If you haven't signed up yet, take advantage of this deal because it's not going to last forever. Go to theathletic.com/Goodman to get 40% off your monthly subscription. That's a subscription for less than $3 a month just by going to theathletic.com/Goodman. Shams, Amick, Harper, J. King, all for less than $3 a month. Sign me up. Sign yourself up too. Athletic.com/Goodman. All right, so Toronto gets Marc Gasol. Philly gets Tobias Harris. Celtics stand pat for the most part. Milwaukee, I don't know. Did Milwaukee get better?
I think so. I mean, Mirotic should make their
offensively.
offense hell.
Yeah.
But defensively, now I look at them, they have some guys who can't really match up, I think. Like Brook Lopez, what's going to happen when he faces Al Horford in the playoff series, if he does?
Right.
What's going to happen with Mirotic when he has to guard, Tatum or Brown or Morris? What's going to happen with Ersan Ilyasova if he plays, if he's getting hunted?
Yeah, I'm not scared of Milwaukee. I got to say, I'm not that scared of Milwaukee in the playoffs. Maybe I'm crazy here. I'm way more scared of Toronto. I think Toronto is the best team in the East right now. I think they're the best team.
Philly is? You don't think Philly's upgrades made them?
I mean, they are on paper. Yes, on paper, I think Philly's the best team. I just worry about them. I worry about there being one basketball and how Jimmy Butler is going to adjust to the fact that he is not the guy by any means, and how he's already adjusted to the fact that he is not going to be the guy. This is Joel Embiid's team. This is always going to be Joel Embiid's team. And Jimmy Butler, as much as I think he says the right things, that he wants to win, he also wants to be the man. And I just don't know how this whole dynamic, I always felt like it was tough enough, the dynamic of Joel and Ben Simmons and how different they are personality-wise. And now you throw Butler, and now you throw Tobias in, Tobias played great with the Clippers. He's going to get paid. I mean, he bet on himself, and it's going to work here. But one basketball, those four guys. I mean, Ben doesn't care about shooting it, but the other three do.
Yeah, I'm interested. I have no idea who's the best team in the East, honestly. Of those four teams, you could convince me any of them are the best team. I do have the same questions you do about Milwaukee in the playoffs, but I also think they have so much spacing, and Giannis is so damn good.
Yes, he is.
That it might not matter. All their issues, they may not matter. Giannis is so good, and they have so much shooting around him. I don't know if anyone can stop that team, and I'm not sure they can stop everybody when it comes to the playoffs. Obviously, they've had a really, really good regular season defense, but things are different in the playoffs. Everything's different in the playoffs. The Sixers last year, they ended the season with however many wins. They couldn't guard the Celtics in the playoffs. They didn't have the individual talent to do that. And that was a Celtics team that didn't have Kyrie Irving, that didn't have Gordon Hayward. So it's going to be interesting. You could honestly tell me any of those four teams would win, and I won't be surprised at all, no matter what. I do know that two teams are going to be really pissed off after the second round.
Yeah, no doubt.
Two teams are going to go home and just be devastated.
I mean, you got to figure the top four are going to look in some order of Milwaukee, Toronto, Philly, and Boston, and Indiana's going to slip. At the end of the day, I know they're playing well without Victor, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't expect Philly and Boston to play in the first round. I mean, imagine that road. Philly, Boston, and then you got to play Milwaukee in the second round. You win that one, and you're rewarded with playing Milwaukee like that. And if you're Milwaukee, you don't want to see that. I mean, that's the other thing. Milwaukee's going to probably get one of Philly or Boston in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a heck. And the other layer to it all is that there are so many top free agents on those four teams.
Yeah.
Kawhi, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, Kyrie Irving. How much will these playoffs impact? Do those guys need a deep run to prove to them that they should stay? Or they might. Kawhi could need to see the Raptors do it. Kyrie could need to see the Celtics do it. Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris could be the same way. And there's just so much pressure on so many teams right now in the East. And everyone loaded up. It's funny, LeBron leaves, and then everyone's like, "Yep,
here we go.
Time to win now."
That's right. So, gun to your head? I know you said you don't know who you pick. I'm going with Toronto out of the East. Just honestly, because of Kawhi. Like Kawhi, I just think they have the toughness factor. Like they're. I don't love Kyle Lowry. Like I like Kyle Lowry. I actually remember sitting back in a high school event years ago. I won't throw this coach under the bus, but I'm sitting with a high major assistant coach at a high school tournament watching Kyle Lowry, and both of us agreed he wasn't good enough to play at Villanova. That worked out well for us. Good job. Yeah. Good evaluation for me.
1 year later, he's a lottery pick.
Exactly. I mean, he's just a killer. Like that. I mean, Kyle Lowry never looked the part necessarily, but he's a killer. Kawhi's a killer. Marc Gasol's all about the right things. It gives them something they didn't really have. So I'm going with Toronto. I mean, I really am. I'm going to ride with them because I think their chemistry is really good and their toughness is at a different level. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Toronto too. And I say that just because actually, I mean, I could go with any of these teams, but Toronto, to me, they have two-way players everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what you need in the playoffs. And I don't think Milwaukee has enough of them. Philadelphia, I think, may have the best top-end talent. And some people would probably argue they definitely have the best top-end talent. But I don't know if their depth can hold up. And I think even if you have two of those other guys on the court at all times, when you're running out there subpar NBA players in a playoff series against teams that are loaded, it's going to be rough. And maybe they'll load up at the buyout in buyout season with a couple extra guys, and that'll change the equation. But to me, Toronto, and the Celtics have the most two-way players right now. And Toronto, based on how the season has gone so far, I feel comfortable going with them. But I'm interested to see what Kyrie has in store for the playoffs on his own team. He has always been a guy who raised his level of play in the playoffs to just total other level. And obviously he was always on LeBron's side before. So Kyrie not by himself, with a very talented Celtics team, but I'm interested to see what he has in store for the playoffs because he's been electric in the past in the postseason.
By the way, we forgot to mention the huge addition by the Bucks of Trayvon Duval. Huge addition.
That enormous.
Many
apologies to the Duval family.
That's right. He was actually like a top 5 player coming out of high school, which God knows how anybody ranked him that high. Brad Stevens. All right. Nobody has been a bigger proponent of Brad Stevens than yours truly, dating back from his days at Butler, where I still say his accomplishment of going to 2 straight national title games at Butler might have been the greatest accomplishment in college basketball history. Doing it clean at Butler at a mid-major program. I know people would argue with me, the whole John Wooden thing. Well, I'm not sure. We won't talk about clean with that whole deal. And some other accomplishments. But I think Brad's is right up there. I've sung his praises over the last few years. I think he's done an incredible job taking some of those teams. I mean, the Isaiah Thomas team, just honestly, like making Isaiah or letting Isaiah be Isaiah, and doing what he did with that team. We're going to look back at those 2 teams and look at those rosters in 10 years and be like, oh my God, how did those teams get to the Eastern Conference Finals? But now Brad's got expectations. And he's got egos, and he's got guys right now that want more. And instead of coaching the guys he did at Butler, which were easy, and the guys that he did early on in the Celtics, which were easier because they didn't have the big egos, he's adjusting. Can he handle this team? I mean, listen, Gary Washburn wrote a story in the Globe today that I looked at it, I was like, whoa, like he took a little bit of a shot at Brad here, which nobody's really done around here. He's been kind of the golden boy so far, and again, rightfully so. How much blame should Brad Stevens get because he's gotten a shit ton of credit over the last 4 years or so?
It's hard to know exactly how much blame he deserves, and I say that with every coach. Like, it's really hard to separate where a coach's impact ends and where the player's impact begins. The other thing that makes it tough to judge what Brad's impact is, he will never, ever criticize a player in the press.
Ever.
If he has an issue with Kyrie's comments about the young guys, he's talking about it to Kyrie. He will never share it with the press. If he has an issue with what Marcus Morris said the other night, he'll talk to Marcus Morris about it. We won't know about it. So I don't know how forceful he's been with these guys about trying to maintain everything. I do know that this has been probably a eye-opening educational process for him, trying to deal with everything that's going on this season. You know, we've talked about the young guys fitting into smaller roles, and Kyrie trying to adapt into a leader. And we didn't even talk about Kyrie's future and the uncertainty and the cloud that brought over the Celtics recently, and Anthony Davis's future and the cloud that brought over the Celtics lately. So
only so much time.
They have everything going on, and I think it's pretty obvious that this team has underachieved to this point, and I think it's pretty obvious that guys have had troubles with roles. I also think a lot of what Brad has done is very understandable. You try to start Gordon Hayward for 20 games. Of course you try to start Gordon Hayward for 20 games. He's an all-star. You want him in there. You want to see what it looks like with him.
Especially with their relationship, Jay. Especially with the relationship they had. I mean, there's no way of all people Brad was not going to start him.
Okay, if it is the relationship that Brad is leaning back on, then I think that's a knock on Brad. He has to be strong enough to look Gordon in the eye, and if he's not right, and if he's known he's not right, and if he's known he wasn't the right answer for the starting lineup from the start, you got to tell him that. And
I think he was just hoping. I think he was just hoping that it would start to click, and it just hasn't. And it's clicked maybe in spurts.
And you get all that, right? And I think everything he's done is understandable. I think switching the starting lineup to Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris was a good move. I think really the Celtics have played well since then. So it's hard
these
to
two games.
Everything on Brad.
Right.
The biggest thing to me is managing the players in the locker room. Does he have the guts to tell Kyrie, you can't be saying crap like that anymore? And
somebody needs to, Jay.
Know.
Doesn't somebody need to?
Okay, so Kyrie has stopped saying all that stuff.
Yeah.
Was it because Brad talked to him and said, we need you to cut that out? Or was it because Kyrie came to it on his own? I don't know. And I'll never know because Brad would never share that.
Yeah.
Brad, every dealing he has with a player is privately. And I respect that about him. But also it makes it tougher to determine what's on him and what's not. I do think, in the past with the Celtics, like you said, everybody on his team, it's been like everybody's been overachieving.
Right.
And I don't even want to call it overachieving because those guys, Isaiah was unbelievable during his time in Boston.
Yep.
But Isaiah, he never had that role. So coming in, he had a chip on his shoulder, one. He was playing in a role that was bigger than he'd ever had, two. Jay Crowder, same thing. Evan Turner, he bottomed out in Indiana. He comes to Boston. He's trying to rebuild his career. When he becomes a sixth man, getting a lot of touches, he's excited about that.
Yeah.
Everybody to this point in Brad's career was kind of given a second chance or playing a new role. Jason Tatum last year was a rookie. Jaylen Brown last year was getting extended minutes for the first time. Everybody was excited in their roles. Now, for the first time, it's guys who aren't excited in their roles. And I think that was a big adjustment for the players. And I think dealing with that for really the first time has been an eye-opener for Brad. And he's one of the smartest guys I've been around and one of the best learners I've been around. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't
figure this out,
come away from this with a better idea of how to handle this situation if he encounters it in the future. But this year, I think it's fair to say that the Celtics and probably Brad Stevens have not dealt with the weight of expectations and the roles and everything else as well as they should have.
All right, so we'll fast forward. end of the season, let's just hypothetically say the Celtics either go to the Eastern Conference Finals or the Eastern Conference Semifinals, and then the watch is on. The AD watch is on. What are you making you Danny Ainge? You don't have the gray hair. You don't dress nearly as good as Danny. But I'm going to make you Danny anyway for a day here. And what do you offer? What are you willing to offer for Anthony Davis? Are you willing to throw Jason Tatum in a trade? I am not. I would throw Jaylen Brown and Smart or Horford and all the picks, everything. But I'm not giving up. I want
so
the
you
core.
Don't trade Tatum no matter what. If they say to you, we won't make this trade unless you put Tatum in the offer, you're just saying no.
Well, it depends what else.
Anthony Davis go to another team.
I guess if it's okay, AD for, let's say what the money would work of like Horford, Tatum, and one of the picks. Yeah, then I'd consider it. But I'm not giving up Tatum and all the picks. I'm giving up Jaylen, Horford, Smart, and all the picks. Like, I don't care. I want a core of AD, Kyrie, Tatum, and I'm going to pray that Gordon Hayward gets healthy for next year and go in with those four dudes. And then I'm going to figure out the rest of the roster. Tice, we'll resign, keep Tice, keep Baines. There's 6. And obviously you're going to need some more perimeter guys, but I think you'll find guys on low contracts that want to come in, veterans that want to play with that group and have a chance to win a title. So I would be hell bent on not giving up Tatum, but yes, under the right circumstance. See, I'd just be worried. I'd be worried because if you lose AD after the year and you've given up Tatum, I would be pissed. If you lose Jaylen and Horford and Smart and all those guys are all replaceable to me to some degree. Tatum to me is a star. He's going to be a star in this league.
Yeah, I'm with you that Tatum is obviously their best piece, and I do think he's going to be a star. And I do think that when he puts on weight, the world better watch out. Yeah. That dude's going to score a lot of freaking points.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think if they tell you need to put Tatum in it, you have to, and you hope like hell you don't have to. You try to load up all your picks. But here's the thing: the Kings pick is looking worse than ever.
Yeah, it is.
They might make the playoffs. The Clippers, they might drop out of the playoffs after their trade.
They won't get their pick.
So
right.
You might not get their pick. The Grizzlies pick looks great, whether you get that a year or two down the road. But the Celtics chest of assets isn't what it used to be. And so if you have to have Tatum in the deal, I think you do it. And I think you do it, number one, because it's Anthony Davis. And if you can get Anthony Davis and you can keep Kyrie and you can pair those guys together, that's
you're going to pray. And you're going to pray that you're going to sell them. That you're going to sell them on staying. I mean, that's the one thing you got to still worry about is.
Well, Kyrie, if you get Anthony Davis, Kyrie better be sold.
You would think.
He's a free agent July 1st.
Right.
And if you're trading for Anthony Davis, you better have Kyrie. Because if you don't have Kyrie, I don't get that. But if you do get a commitment from Kyrie, or even if Kyrie tells you if you get Anthony Davis, I'll sign, then you go out, get Anthony Davis, you pair him with Kyrie, and you hope that Anthony Davis will like Brad Stevens and will like Boston and will like a crowd that is sold out every night and will make him a legend if he wins a title. I think Kyrie and Anthony Davis, it would be tough for those guys, or it would be tough for Davis to leave that at the end, especially I doubt that the Lakers will have cap space by the time he's actually a free agent in 2020. LeBron and the Lakers, LeBron's already 34. I don't think they punt that cap space down the road. I just don't see that happening. So, so the threat of the Lakers to me is minimal. And if it's not the Lakers, who else is it going to be? Where else could he go that he'd like more than what they have in Boston with him and Kyrie and whatever other pieces they hold on to in that trade?
No, I'm with you. I don't think there's another team that can offer enough to get him and take the risk on losing him after a year. I mean, that's the hardest part of it. If you're Danny Ainge, you are rolling the dice in a sense of giving up a kid in Jason Tatum who could be a star in the league, and his contract is so favorable for the next couple of years. You know, I don't. It's a tough one. It is. It's going to be a difficult decision. I think obviously if you're Ainge, you hold out as long as you can without putting Tatum in the deal, and you're playing chicken ultimately with the Pelicans and hoping. You know, and unfortunately, Jaylen Brown's value isn't what it was at the end of last year. Jaylen Brown's value was pretty damn high, and it's just not that right now. And you wonder if they can kind of somehow get his value up, which I don't know how you can without benching Hayward or really, you know, cutting into his minutes. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, certainly that's the big thing to look at. Before I let you go. I know you have a big Brian Scalabrine story where you guys went one-on-one, and I need to find out what the hell happened there. Like was Scal playing? What's the genesis of this one-on-one game?
So this was when Scal he was trying to get back in shape for, I think it was the first Big Three season, and Scal is a lunatic. Like, Scal is a really hard-working dude. So when he was getting back in shape for the Big Three, he was doing like 2-a-days, 3-a-days. And so he was at the practice facility just to work out. And I was there to go to practice, the Celtics practice, and interview the players. And I don't remember how we decided to play one-on-one, but I think Scal challenged me. He might have even been joking. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I walk out on the court, and the first play, as I remember things, the first play, he goes to the hoop, and I strip him. I think I hit it out of bounds, and it was still his ball. And it was the worst move I ever could have made. the next play, I swear to God.
Did he dunk on you?
I knew Scal was a much better basketball player than I am, obviously. He's an NBA player. I did not know how strong that dude was. He put his shoulder down into my stomach. And I'm telling you, I braced with everything I had. I braced, like, I put everything I had into just trying to, like, bump him just a little bit. I was motionless. He just put his shoulder in me. I was, like, stunned. And he went in for a layup. I was like, oh, my God. That is about as emasculated as I've ever felt in my entire life. It was a horrific feeling to know that you just had no prayer of guarding this guy. And so we played one-on-one. I think Marcus Smart was on the sideline watching, wondering what the hell was going on. And I ended up scoring a few buckets. I think Scal let me have a few. But when he wanted to, he was so, like, the mix of skill and strength was just stupid. It was a joke how strong he was. And I didn't realize how strong he was going to be. I mean, I know he's 6'10", 250. But until I felt that shoulder and I was just totally immobilized, I had no clue what I was dealing with. And now I do. Now I know how little of a man I am.
Yeah, it's hard I remember playing Shelvin Mack. I played Shelvin Mack on draft day. The day before he was drafted, I played him on one-on-one, and I got a few buckets. But, yeah, it's one of those where they're at a different level, and Shelvin probably wasn't even trying, and I'm sure Scal was just kind of messing around with you as much as he needed to do. And
he was until I stripped him.
Yeah, and that was it. And then you're right. And Scal's probably been eating a few burgers too, so he's probably a little bit heavier than 250. You know?
No, I'm telling you, he was trying to get in great shape for that Big Three. He was doing everything he could. He was doing 2-a-days, 3-a-days. He was in the Celtics facility all the time, like just getting right for it. And I ended up in the way, and I ended up getting destroyed.
Well, listen. I appreciate you coming on. I think I'm gonna have to, like, take care of you for coming on the pod with, like, you know, we joke about your attire that you wear, your clothing choices. So I might have to get you a good, like, Nordstrom's gift certificate or something so you can step it up.
How about you just stop putting your bag in my corner so you don't have to lean over me every night to get it?
I know.
How about that?
I don't have a seat there. I'm not there often enough. I don't have a real seat, so I got to throw my bag in that corner there. And every time I kind of go to get that bag at the end of the night, you think I'm trying to cop a feel or something. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just trying to get my bag. Trust me, I need nothing more. But
stay away from me, man.
I will stay away. All right, listen, have fun in Philly. Get out and I don't know, go somewhere in Philly to get a few drinks and watch some games. All right?
Will do.
All right, man. Jay King, thanks a
All
lot,
right,
man.
thanks for having me on, my man.
You too.
Hello, I'm Dan Lothian, host of the Behind the Media podcast on the CLNS Media Network. Along with Jimmy Young, we dive into the biggest media headlines each week with honest, informed, and sometimes irreverent perspectives. It's not all serious. We deliver information and entertainment. As we like to say on Behind the Media, we find the interesting in media so you don't have to go searching for it. Listen to our podcast and get prepped for the next trip to the water cooler. Subscribe to Behind the Media wherever you get your podcast, or find us on www.clnsmedia.com.